Hello, welcome to this video for CMI assignment 501. This is part 7 in the series that I'm working through, and I'll be discussing and sharing some ideas relating to assessment criteria 2.3. So assessment criteria 2.3 discuss the influence of culture and values on management and leadership styles. I'm actually going to refer back to the theory that I shared in the last video here. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend having a quick look at the video that I did for 2.2 first, because I'll be brief here on the leadership theory bit, and I go into it in a bit more depth in that previous video. So I recommend you take a look at that. So the action word is discuss. Give a detailed account, including a range of views or opinions, which include contrasting perspectives. So, okay, so more than one point of view. So if this seems like I'm having a bit of a debate, I suppose I am in a way. And so I'm going to be putting forward, some slightly different perspectives, as I go through this video. So I'm going to try and demonstrate a little bit of critical thinking by um, um, putting forward a point of view and then maybe looking at a few potential flaws in that point of view. So I think a good place to begin is to think about organizational culture. What is it and how might we define it? So quite a famous definition for organizational culture, a pattern of shared basic assumptions that the group learns as it solves its problems of external adaptation and internal integration that has worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel in relation to those problems. I certainly quite like Edgar Schein's point about how it's a pattern of shared basic assumptions. So it's like, this is how we do things, this is who we are. So that when new people come, it's a kind of set of norms and values and ideas that people are kind of expected to take on when they become part of an organization. This isn't just for businesses, this could be for sports teams, for hobby clubs, it could be for all sorts, that when you have a group of people working together, a sort of a culture forms. It's that kind of shared way of being. What Shine's also saying here is that organizations might well aim to articulate that so that they can explain what that is. So it's worked well enough to be considered valid and therefore to be taught to new members as the correct way to perceive, think, and feel. That's where organizational values often come from. Values are often a way of trying to articulate and explain what our culture is. So that new people or even external people, whoever it is that we're communicating with, can kind of understand what our culture is all about. Another different definition. Now, I don't really know who to attribute this to. I've heard it from a few different sources. The way we do things around here. There we go. So it's a bit less wordy than Edgar Schein's definition. The way something about the simplicity of that may be a little bit too simple. Peter Hawkins, what people stop noticing after 3 months. Yeah, I suppose because after 3 months, you sort of become part of it, don't you? So again, I suppose if you think about a time when you started a new job and you probably looked at the new organization, you probably noticed some of its quirks and ways of being. But then after a few months, you just stop noticing because they just become normal. I guess maybe that's the point. When you become part of it, you become assimilated into that culture. So I think it could be really good to begin with a little definition of what we mean by organizational culture, and also how culture relates to values. So as I said, it may well be that values are a way of trying to articulate what the culture is. So organizational values are guiding principles that aim to articulate the culture of the organization. So when you become part of us, these are the values that we expect you to work to or to use when you make decisions and how you communicate. In a previous video, I have talked in a little bit more depth about organizational values. It's where we looked at organizational values and ethics. So some of the points there would be valid here as well. Here's an interesting thing, though, is that sometimes your values may genuinely reflect the culture of the organization. Sometimes they might just be words on the wall. I suppose I think about a couple of different organizations that, I've worked with. One is Bernardo's. That's an organization where I genuinely felt that everybody involved in it absolutely bought into the purpose, the values, and the culture of that organization. I suppose that's why you would go to work for a really values-led organization like that. Conversely, there are other organizations you could ask people what the values are, and they wouldn't have a clue because they're just seen as being too distant. Maybe it's perceived as belonging to HR and nobody else. Many years ago, I was doing a bit of training, and we were talking about brand, and we had to go and check and see what people who worked in different organizations thought about their brand. And I went into McDonald's, and I went to go and talk to the young person behind the counter at the time. Their kind of motto was, "I'm loving it." Anyway, so I went and asked them, I said, "Are you loving it?" And the young person said, "No, I'm bloody hating it." So there we go. Sometimes values and reality can be a little bit different. So it's not always, the values aren't always a true and accurate representation of the culture. Sometimes they are just words on the wall. I think that's something to watch out for. So, how do values and culture influence leadership styles? So, what we need to do here is we need to think about an organization. We need to think about how you would describe its culture and values, and how you think those values influence leadership styles within that organization. So, it could be your current organization, a past one, or just one that you have a little bit of awareness of. So, really, I think the way to tackle this is with a bit of a case study. What is that organization's culture and values? Sorry, what are that organization? No, what is that organization's culture and values? And how does that relate to the way that people lead in that organization? Very quickly, because I talked about this in the last video, a nice theory to reference is Daniel Goleman's model of leadership, where he talks about these 6 different styles of leadership. So I talked about this in my last video, so I'll keep it consistent, and I'll refer to it again here. I think there's some value in going with that. So I suppose we could look at a couple of different organizations here. So British Army, that's one that I was part of for a number of years when I was a bit younger. That was interesting. So I would say that in, say, the training establishments, it is very do it my way. I would say, because of they're getting lots of people through very quickly. There's absolutely no space for dialogue. Really, is very much about one-way communication, and sort of part of it really is people learning to be very disciplined and to follow orders. I would say that the army in the training world has, the preferred style of leadership would be very much a pace-setting style of leadership. This is what you're going to do, and you're going to do it our way. It's not really about negotiation discussion. However, actually, then when you graduate and you come out of training and you get your real job and you're in it and you're really doing it for real, it probably shifts to, just going back to Goleman's model, the authoritative style. I would say it's very much there's very much more freedom and flexibility than people might initially have thought, so, or than people think. So that I would say the typical leadership style that you'll find for once people are through training and they're actually in their jobs is the authoritative style. So you get given your mission, you get told what you have to accomplish, but then you are expected to work out your own plan. It's called mission command in that context, and it's very much an authoritative style of leadership. There's more flexibility and freedom than people think. The mission is something that you're told to achieve, but you are given a lot of flexibility, freedom. You're allowed to be really quite creative in how you create the plan to get there. The other styles will all have their place as well, possibly in certain situations. But I would say the culture of the British Army, yeah, in training, I would say pace setting, in real world work, operations, that type of thing, the authoritative style. Now, there we go. Toyota's very different as an organization. Toyota have a bit of a mantra that leaders need to teach, that it shouldn't just be about the skills and knowledge of the expert individual. When you move into a leadership role, if you're leading others in Toyota, there's a really big focus on teaching and coaching and upskilling the people around you for the long term. So, because of Toyota's culture, having that focus on long term capability building I would say that one of the key leadership styles that you find in that culture is the coaching style of leadership. Um, a lot of their models and ways of working are very much about facilitation and teaching and coaching, people in your team to problem solve and to bring their best thinking. So different type of culture, and yeah, that's the leadership style that I've observed in that culture. So what I've just done, I've compared two different organizations. That would be a really good thing to do when you're approaching this assignment. Of course, we have to be mindful of word counts and that type of thing. But when you're working through this assessment criteria, if you were to look at, say, two different organizations, give a brief summary of their culture and values and how you think that influences their leadership style, that'd be great, just as I've done there with the Army and Toyota. So there we go. And that brings us to the end of another video and another assessment criteria. I hope that's been helpful, and please look out for the next video.